when dealing with the text editor in Cyberschool, there's kind of a lot to cover because it is pretty there's a lot going on in the editor. So this will be a pretty lengthy video, but I had this text box here, and I'm just gonna open this up with the little gear symbol. And this is the text editor that I'll be going over, and you'll be seeing it everywhere in Cyberschool again. You might be seeing it in text boxes or on pages or just little content areas on your site. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna click these four arrows to maximize it so we get a full screen effect. Okay, so I always mention that we have some pretty standard formatting like bold, italics, and underline. And let me go ahead and I'll show you. This is bold, and then we have italics, and then underlined. And we also have this strike through, okay? Okay, and then we have X, and this says subscript, X, and then superscript, if you weren't sure what those were. All right, and as we go along, we have things like copy formatting. So this is something like if I want some text here, and whenever I highlight this bold and copy the formatting for that, and you'll see that the cursor gets like a little paintbrush to it, and the cursor is a bit more darkened, but I'll highlight the some text here, and you'll see now the some text has bold to it. So what I'm doing there is I'm highlighting some text, say this underline here. So the formatting of this is currently underlined, and I'm using a little paintbrush to copy the formatting. And then the next thing I highlight, I say just this some part here, will be underlined as well. So it removed the bold because this underline does not have boldface to it, just the underline there. All right, so that's the little paintbrush there. Then we have this remove formatting, and this is useful if you want to say, let's go ahead and I'll just Control C and then Control V that. And let me highlight this whole thing and say remove formatting. This it looks like a T with an underline and then an X on it as well. So that'll take everything that was formatted with this and just remove it. So it removed the underline and then it removed the boldface as well. Okay, then we have numbered lists. So 1, 2, and 3. And then bulleted list. Bulleted 1, bulleted 2, bulleted 3. And the neat thing about these lists here is that you're able to right click this text here and we have bulleted list properties. So this is where you can set up, is this circles? And you'll see the kind of bullets change to just little circles, hollow circles there. We have disks, which are the filled in circles. And we also have squares, which are just the squares there. So if you're finding that your bullets just aren't showing up, it's likely that this is set to not set, which in the editor appears as bullets, but when you're not viewing the editor, you'll see that they're actually disappeared. So you want to set that to disks. And with numbered lists, we can look at numbered list properties. We can set up the start value. So if this is starting at, starting at 3, it'll go 3, 4, 5, or starting at 4 and be 4, 5, 6, etc. And you can also set what kind of number this is starting with. If it's a Roman, a lower Roman, upper Roman, lower alpha, upper alpha, or even decimal. And decimal is the 1, 2, 3, etc. Okay, so just about everything in this editor has properties to it. All right, then we have things like increasing indent, and you'll see when I do that, the cursor at the bottom kind of increases. Let's go indented. And then we have this decrease indent that'll send us back. All right, next we have this block quote. And this is actually pretty strange, but it's essentially if you want to use a quote in here. So I don't have a quote off the top of my head. This is a standard quote. and you'll see the quote is actually has a strange kind of font to it, and it's mainly because it's a block quote. Let's go ahead and enter and take that off. Okay, so that was these quotes here. Okay, next we have this div here, and if you're not familiar with div containers, it's perfectly fine. I'll go over this more in depth when I talk about like advanced formatting if I have a video over that. But the div containers are essentially just spacing for it's really for uh, kind of organizing your content a little better. So let me go ahead and click create div content, and I'll just go over what's happening here. Okay, so we have this create div container, and it says style here. So I'll go ahead and drop that down, and we can say special container. It doesn't really matter what we choose there. But these style sheet classics, if you're not familiar with CSS or Bootstrap or anything like that, don't worry about this. But if you are, this is where you'll place your Bootstrap classes in this style sheet classes here. And then over in advanced, this is things like an ID if you want to give this a special ID, the language code, the style. So you see background is this all ease here, border is 1 pixel, solid, and this particular color here, I think it's like a darker gray. This is the padding, so 5 pixels on top and bottom, and then 10 pixels on left and right, as well as an advisory title and a language direction. So right off the bat, if I go ahead and set this to special container, you'll see the style fills in there, and I click OK, we have this little box here. All right, so again, I'll talk about that more when I talk about more like advanced formatting for text editors, if I have a video over that. Um, I'm hoping to have one over that, but I'm afraid it'll kind of confuse people a bit more, which is perfectly fine. It's advanced for a reason, but those are div containers. So if you kind of just want to not format but organize your content a little better. Okay, then we have things like alignment. So left align, um, center align, and then this right align. Okay, then we have this justify here. And let me go ahead and where is my cursor at? And I believe justify will, I'm not quite certain. See justify. Hmm. It may not seem like it's doing anything, but I believe there is a Bootstrap class called justify, which will actually take all of your content and align it together. If that doesn't make sense, it's perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and just move on to this one here. It's text direction. So you'll see, let me scroll down here, and we have currently it's set to left to right. So I'll say left to right, and then a new line up it this way, and you'll see the cursors on this right hand side, and I'll say right to left. Okay, so it doesn't really seem like it does a whole lot there, um, but let's go ahead and move on. Okay, then we have these set language option here. So we have Arabic, French, and Spanish. So if you want to change the language that you're typing in, say Spanish, and you want to start typing in Espanol, and you'll see the language kind of change there. Well, I typed in Espanol, but um, it's just saying it's in a special language. So if you start typing a Spanish message to your Spanish-speaking parents or students, you can just change the language so that they know it's in a different language there. So it won't translate your text. It will actually just make it so um, it looks like it's a different language there. Okay, then we have links. So I'm going to go ahead and create a link here. Um, I'll just say link. And with links, this is things like linking to files, linking to different websites or anything like that. So all we really need is a display text and a URL there. And I'll go over what all this other stuff is, in the advanced portion. But I'm just going to put a pound sign there. And you'll see the protocol change to other, which just means this isn't HTTP, it's not HTTPS, it's not FTP, which is a file transfer protocol, or it's not news, which is kind of like a news website. Um, Other is just something other than that, which is the pound sign is actually the HTML encoding for a dead link. Basically, this won't go anywhere. Okay, and you'll see this actually looks like a link here. Okay, other things we can do with links is upload. So I can upload a file here, say just this file of puppies, and I'll click send it to the server, which is important. This actually uploads it to your Cyberschool server. And you'll see the URL fills in with this pathway, this files, user one file, and then the file name there. This is the pathway to this file on your Cyberschool server. So I'll give this a display text. Now this is very important to understand that I'm uploading this in the link option. So this image will be placed in the file directory of my Explorer. And I have a video going over my Explorer, so if you don't quite understand that, it's perfectly fine. But this image will be placed in the file directory, not the image directory. Okay, we also have this browse server, which is used to look at files that you've uploaded previously and you're able to actually select those files to relink them. So if you've already uploaded this file in the My Explorer, you can always browse the server and locate it there. Click OK, and it just says image file there. The next option is this little flag here for anchor. Now, anchors are actually anchors in text. So let me go ahead and I'll create an anchor here at the very top called top. Okay, so now I have this little flag there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see, on the right-hand side, I'll I'll just say back to top. So generally when you're on a website and you see back to top at the bottom and it takes you right to the top, this is how they do it. They actually create the text back to top, create it as a link, and they put pound top. Okay, so generally every single anchor is prefixed with this pound sign there, and that's why the pound sign takes you to nowhere. Is because you're anchoring to um, basically you're anchoring to an anchor that doesn't exist, so it just takes you to nowhere basically. But I'm typing in pound sign top here, and notice this top is actually the name of the anchor that I set. Okay, so this back to top will actually take me back up to this anchor here. Okay, so those are anchors. It's great for if you're kind of sectioning off your content. Okay, so those are anchors, this little flag here. Then we have images, and images work the exact same way as links here. So you have the browse server to browse for an image you've already uploaded. We have the upload option to choose a file from our local machine. I'll do the browse server, and it's not possible with XML. I'm not surprised that we have some errors there. Okay, so by clicking OK, I get an error that says alt tag is empty, which just means that this alternative text needs some value to it. Uh, Training of text. Now, theoretically, you want to make this as descriptive as possible because people who are partially blind or completely blind use a device called screen readers, and screen readers actually read this text to the user to actually describe the image. So just by saying training text on this picture of Bane, this bulldog here isn't very good, but generally you want to make this alternative text as descriptive as possible. Okay, also with image properties, we have width, which is by default set to pixels. This 272 by 289. Now, I recommend using percentages, and the rule of thumb that I follow that generally works is divided by 10. Um, divided by 10, so give or take 27, and then add a percent sign. And you can just add a percent sign to the height as well. Okay, you can also give this a border. Give it some horizontal space, which is spacing on the right or left side. Let's say 5, and you'll see there's a bit more space to it. Or 50, there's a bit more space to that as well. 50% doesn't really do anything. or horizontal space, or vertical space, excuse me. And you see there's some spacing on the top there. We also have alignment if you want to set some alignment left, and you'll see the text actually, the preview for this text actually goes to the side of it. Same for align right. So this is actually wraps the text around this image there versus not set where it's actually going to appear right below or to the like generally to the bottom side of. Click, you want to click OK, and your image appears there. So those are images. Then we have tables. And tables are generally used for, listing off content in tables basically. So you just specify the number of rows and number of columns. The headers, if the first row contains all the headers, or the first column defines all the headers, or if they both contain headers. The border size, you can set this to 0 for no border. The alignment, if this is left aligned, center aligned, or right aligned. The width, you'll always want to set the width. Generally, you want to use a percentage, but uh, if not, that's perfectly fine. Most tables in Cyberschool kind of format themselves to mobile devices, although I would highly recommend using a percentage though. Excuse me. You don't have to worry about setting the height because the height will actually be determined by how many rows there are. Then cell spacing, which is the space between each cell set to 1, but you can set this as high as you'd like. And then cell padding, which is the space between the content inside the cell and the actual cell, the cell border. Okay, there's also caption and summary down here. So if you'd like to add a caption to this, let's say captioned table, and I'll show you what this looks like. So this little caption table here, this is your caption here, and you can always apply something like heading 2 to this or anything like that. All right, so those were tables. And then horizontal lines, um, they just show you like a little gray line that appears there. All right, then smileys, and these are all the smileys we have to work with. We want to start adding some smileys into here, or special characters. So you can also open up, say, character map, and it's just about the same thing there. You'll see, you'll find a lot of the character map characters in this insert special characters here. All right, special characters. Page break for printing, which just means if you find yourself wanting to print out the content here, this page break will actually allow you to separate the information on different pages. And then iframes. Now, iframes work by embedding content. And the only danger here is about ADA compliance is you want to make sure that the content that you're embedding is actually ADA compliant as well. And generally, the way this is used is we'll type in https youtube.com/embed/, and so at the end of this, let me go ahead and I'll go to YouTube, and I'll just take this here, this watch v equals, and then FBD, capital ZL, CLG, capital T6, capital E. This is the video ID, so you'll want to copy this and paste this on the end there. So this will actually embed this what does my husky do when home alone video. Okay, then you'll want to do a width and height. So I'll say 50% by 300. So notice I'm crossing these here. This percentage is going to be 50% of the widget that's encapsulating it, this text box. And this height is going to be in pixels. Now you don't want to set a percentage for height because percentages work on the principles of HTML parents, and if that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry. It just means that this iframe doesn't have an element encapsulating it, so there's no height percentage to go off of, which is perfectly fine. It doesn't make sense that, you know, if it doesn't make sense that you're using percentages over pixels, you can set this to a percentage as well, say 500. There's no shame in that. You can also set the alignment left, right, top, middle, or bottom. So there's a bit more options here because you actually have more freedom as to where you can place your iframe. Enable scroll bars, which just means if this isn't actually if this is not embedding a video, it's embedding a document. We can enable scroll bars so that your users can scroll through the actual document. Show frame border, and this just means if your iframe has a border to it, typically all iframes do, if that border is going to be showing or not. The name, you don't have to worry about the name, this is just the name of the iframe. The title is actually important for ADA compliance. So if this is left blank, you might see a frame title, which just means you have to go into the iframe and give this a title. You can use the iframe widget as well, although the iframe widget does not allow for advisory titles. So you'll for sure get the error and there's no way to rectify that. That's why I recommend using text boxes for using iframes, just because we have this more advanced configuration where we can set up things like this. And then long description of URL. This is usually this entire URL that we get from YouTube, but you don't have to set that there. You can just leave that blank. Okay, afterwards click OK. And you're going to see this kind of blank box that just has this iframe text inside of it. It's perfectly fine. This is just editor view. This is how we're seeing it as an editor. Okay, next we have upload care. And upload care is just a way to kind of connect to different platforms such as Facebook, Google Drive, Dropbox, Instagram. I think this is Evernote, Flickr, and OneDrive. So you can connect to these different platforms and actually upload images or upload files right from these different platforms here. You just hit connect, and then it asks you to sign into your Google or connect to your Facebook, and it's all confidential. Nobody at Cyberschool will have access to your credentials. So after you've gone ahead and connected to those, you're able to actually, uh, get into your files, your Facebook images or Google Drive files, and actually place those into this editor, this text box here. Okay, then we have accordions. And accordions are actually collapsible content. So let me say 4 collapses. And we'll say panel title 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, we can't really see how this is working right here, but I'll show you once I actually save this and log out. We have a couple more things to go over with styles, which is formatting styles, an italics title, subtitles, special containers, which was that div that we had, inline styles are markers, big text, small text, typewriter text, computer code, keyboard phrases, sample text. There's all this different kind of styles to work with. Then this normal drop down here is if you want to format the normal, by default is set to normal, which is paragraph formatting, but we have formatting for headings. Um, Formatted doesn't quite make sense. It just says formatted. It's just different types of text. So let me just set that and say formatted text. And you'll see the text kind of looks a little strange there. There's a bit of a like a font family thing going on. Okay, there's also address. So 5401 Business Park South, which is IES Cyberschool. So it just looks like an address there. There's also normal div, which is actually, if you remember what we did with divs there, um, it's actually just it'll place a div formatted content there. Okay, then we have font, and this is just changing the font. This is Arial. This is Comic Sans, and you'll see it's actually changing. Georgia. So if you'd like to change the font, you could do that as well, or even the size. And this is the font size here. If you want to change how big or small the text is. By default, I think it's actually set to 11 or 12, but I would say just leave it at default, and you'll be good to go there. Then we have text color. And these are all just standard colors to work with, as well as more colors. Or you can type in what color you like if you're familiar with hexadecimal colors. So like that's going to be just jet black. As well as background colors, you could do the same with background colors, which is just a highlight for it. All right, so we talked about maximize, which is the 4 arrows that make this full screen. And this show blocks button is very useful. I use it all the time. So you'll see when I click on show blocks, I can see every line of text here. So you'll see all this panel content 4, this actually this should actually be moved out. So let me all right. Okay. So now you can see this iframe is in a paragraph formatted line. Then we have this table. We set this caption to H or heading 2, which is H2. This image is a paragraph format. All these paragraph formats. This paragraph inside this div container. This block quote here that we use for quotes. This block quote is set to block quote. Paragraphs, paragraphs. Notice the lists don't have anything because they're kind of out of the paragraph there. Okay, and then this accordions is a series of divs. So this was this accordion one here. It's a bunch of divs. So these divs have classes to them, which actually allow them to operate as accordions. Okay, so let's go ahead and that's the show blocks again. And the last one here is a Bootstrap Grid. Now, I don't use Bootstrap Grids, I'll be completely honest. I don't quite know how they work. Let me go ahead and add one. So you set the number of columns, let's just say 3 columns, and columns are the verticals, and the number of rows to generate, which is how many rows do we want? So 2 rows at 3 columns, so it's a 2 by 3. And it looks like a table, but let's actually just leave that as it is. And let's go ahead and minimize, give this a title, text editor, and then we'll save. And let's refresh. All right. So this little space up here is the anchor, if we remember. Bold, italics, underline, strike through, superscript, subscript, uh, uh, copy formatting, remove formatting, numbered lists, bulleted list, indented, standard quotes, this div container, left, center, right, justified, and you see justified's actually moved away from the left side a bit more, so it's justified away from, it's like has some spacing to it. Left to right, then right to left. The link that goes nowhere. Image file will actually download the image for me. The image itself, the caption table, the iframe here, the panel title. So this is the accordion here. Let me go ahead and click that and you'll see the content actually drops whenever I click the title there. This is what accordions are. Okay, this formatted text and then this address text, the Arial, Comic Sans, and Georgia. And then this here is the Bootstrap Grid. It operates a lot like a table, but we don't have any borders to it, and it kind of organizes the information a lot better. Let me go ahead and I'll switch to mobile view. So Bootstrap grids are really for mobile view because we have this call content 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3 there, which is 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3 there. Um, Again, it's just supposed to be more mobile responsive than actual tables. And that's what we have back to top, which will take me to the top of this text box. And it's right here actually. So it took me to the top of the page, but it essentially it'll take the bottom of your screen and parse it upwards until it hits that anchor there, or the top of the actual page. I just happened to hit the top of the actual page first. All right, so this is the text editor here. I'm going to maximize one more time. All right, so that's everything on this particular row. Again, I want to make another video going over more advanced features, but this is just a basic introduction on what we can do with this text editor. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with Cyberschool support.